I'm joined now by Jocelyn Benson. She's Michigan's current Secretary of State. She's running for re-election this year. She's the author of the book Secretaries of State, Guardians of the Democratic Process. She was with me a couple of weeks ago when I was in Michigan. Secretary Benson, good to see you again. Thank you for being with us. Ruth really outlined the various threats that officials like you are facing this year in the election. It's not the legitimacy of the election, because you know about that. You conduct audits, particularly in Michigan, to determine the safety and the efficacy of elections. But this violence and intimidation thing has become very real in Michigan, largely because you had a plot to kidnap your governor by people who were conspiracy theorists. This trickles down into people's minds about, is my vote legitimate? Is there going to be violence? How do you contend with this?
Well, that's right. It's a strategy to try to discourage everything the professor said and laying out what the end game is. It's a strategy to discourage people from believing in the power of their voice to hold powerful people accountable. And the reality is, in Michigan and in everywhere else, you can trust that the results of the election will be an accurate reflection of the will of the people. And when you vote, your vote will count. And as you mentioned, we have systems, protocols in place to ensure not just the security of the election, but also the accuracy of the results after the fact. What we've been seeing in Michigan for years now, but really an uptick over these last few weeks, is a steady stream of efforts to misinform and discourage the public from participating and to try to get votes thrown out or invalidated wrongly once cast. There's a lawsuit right now attempting to do that also sows seeds of doubt about the process and discourages people from participating. But the process itself will hold.
Your opponent is actually running. When I was in Detroit 2 weeks ago, I actually saw on her billboards, fraud is central to it. Election fraud, fighting election fraud is the basis of her campaign. So she's not even at the point where she's convincing people there's fraud. She's saying, I will be the election fraud fighter. She's made it a de facto issue. What do you do about that? Because you're the actual one who conducted the audits on the last election to know what did or didn't go wrong. How widespread is fraud in Michigan voting?
It's not widespread. It's minuscule. And when it happens, we catch it because we've got layers of security in place so that when people in any way break the law around the election, they are caught and there are consequences. So in the very rare circumstances of fraud, it doesn't interfere with the election, and it is people are found culpable because it breaks the law. And what it is, and you also might have noticed her logo is a lock. To suggest, that somehow we should all be arrested. I'm not sure. Yep. But certainly, it just really underscores the vitriol behind a lot of campaigns right now, spreading lies about fraud or mythical other challenges with elections to scare people and to scare election officials away from doing our jobs.
I was in Arizona last weekend, and the imagery actually is fairly scary because it's sometimes armed men in body armor and masks who watch as cars come to ballot boxes and tape them on their phones or record them on their phones or record the license plate numbers. And I tweeted about that. You then tweeted, if you attempt to intimidate voters or disrupt our elections, there will be consequences. You know a lot about being Secretary of State. I don't know how often in history or recent history that has had to become the responsibility of the Secretary of State. But while there are fraud consequences for performing fraud, you're also now having to tell people there are consequences for intimidating voters.
Indeed. Yeah, it is against the law to intimidate voters. It's against the law to interfere with elections. And when people break the law, we will be there to ensure it's enforced. In fact, we've got a network of folks from pastors to law enforcement to local clerks who are ready to respond and ensure if there are any attempts to intimidate voters. We first try to de-escalate, but we also will hold accountable those who run afoul of the law. And I'm not alone. The Secretary of State in Georgia has also issued a texting program for poll workers. They can send a simple text if they feel that there's a problem in their polling place. So we all have really stepped up across the country as Secretaries of State, embracing this new responsibility we have to protect not just the process, but the people in elections. And that's why I'm actually confident we are more prepared than we were in 2020 to withstand efforts to undermine our elections and protect the people involved in the process.
Jocelyn Benson, good to talk to you again. Thanks for being with us, as you often are. Jocelyn Benson is Michigan's Democratic Secretary of State, who is up for re-election.